Shir on the Kutesiches, Chelek Yud Zayin, Book 17, the Sicha of Tazria, Parshas Hachodesh. Shabbos of Parshas Hachodesh. In other words, the Shabbos we read the second Sefer Torah we take out. We read about the beginning of Chodesh Nisan and the laws of Pesach. Sometimes comes out like in this year on the Shabbos where we read the portion of Tazria. This year we're reading only Tazria, not joined together with Mitzvah. So all inyanim of Torah are exact. So from this itself that both parshas come together, so it's evident, it's imperative that they have a joint point, joint nekuda. Because if not, the Torah, which is Torah's emes, wouldn't bring them together. I mean, at first glance, in other words, the fact that they come together at the same time, although they're seemingly related to different things. Parshas Hachodesh is related to the fact that Pesach is about to come. Tazria is this is a schedule of reading the Parshas. We read it every year. But because Torah's emes, so in truth, there must be a connection between them if they're coming at the same time. At first glance, it doesn't look like that they're connected, because not just don't they have a common point? On the contrary, they seem to be totally different and at odds with each other. Why? Parshas Hachodesh is called Hachodesh because it begins with a pasuk. Hachodesh, this month will be the beginning of months. So it's talking about the month of Nisan, the first month. And the inyan of Chodesh Nisan is it's the month of the redemption. And redemption is something that comes totally from above, as Chazal say, that the pasuk that says in Shir Hashirim Kol Deidi Hinei Zebo, I hear the voice of my beloved, is coming. And not just coming, but as the pasuk continues and says, Medaleg, he's jumping over, which Chazal tells means he jumped over the appointed time that he said he would take them out of Egypt, and he made it happen quicker. In other words, this is something that Hashem, it comes from Hashem's initiative. So Geula is what Hashem initiates. And that's why the whole parsha is called Hachodesh. Even though there's only one pasuk that speaks about Hachodesh, about the month, mentions the month. The rest of the psukim are speaking about Korban Pesach. So, I mean, he could have called it Parshas HaPesach, but because this is the point, the Korban Pesach, why is it called Pesach? The Pesach for jumping over. And that is an indication that this is Geula that comes in a way of jumping, in a way of initiation from above. Hashem, as it says, Hashem revealed himself, Hashem, the King of Kings, revealed himself and redeemed them. And that's what it means, Hachodesh, when it speaks about Chodesh Nisan. Chodesh Nisan is a month of Geula. However, when we talk about the content of Tazria, which is Lashon Nekeva, it's feminine, as it says, Isha ki Tazria, when a woman will be Mazriya. So like the Alter Rebbe says, in the Maimer, Ish Mazriya Tchila, when a man gives seed first, so then you let this Nekeva, then there's born a female. Isha Mazriya Tchila, when the woman gives seed first, you let the Zachar, then there's a male that's born. So we say, what does the Alter Rebbe explain? That Ish, man and woman here are allegoric to tell us about Hashem and the Bnei Yisrael. Hashem being Zachar, and Bnei Yisrael being the Keva. And when Ish Mazriya Tchila, when the man is Mazriya first, so in other words, that means in the allegory when Hashem first arouses a Yid to Avodas Hashem, when the initiation comes from Hashem, so then Yeledes Nekeva gives birth to a female. In other words, it's something that's weaker. So the Avodah is not something that has such a longevity and has such a strength to it. Like Chazal tell us that women, their das is lighter. So, in other words, when something is initiated from above and not initiated from down below, the result is something that's not as strong. However, when Isha Mazras Tchila, when the woman first gives seed, in other words, what this means in Avodah, when the Avodah starts from the arousal from below, the Avodah starts from the initiation from below, so then you let the Zachar, then what's born is a male. In other words, then there's a strong result that's born of it. And the Avodah has a longevity, has a kiyum to it. So for that means to say that what is the meaning, the teaching of the Pasha? Isha ki Tazria. It means it's telling us in Avodas Ha'adam that when a person initiates from below Dafka, then there's a strong Aveda. That's what the message of the Pasha Tazria is, the initiation from below. The Nikud of Pasha Hachodesh seems to be the exact opposite. It's when Hashem, talking about Hashem initiating from above and bringing the redemption. So they're not the same, they're polar opposite. So the Rebbe is going to continue to explain and show us how they're leading and they share the same point. Base. This month will be for you the first of the months. It'll be the first for the months of the year, as the pasuk says. So there's a few ways of explaining this, and of those pirushim are as follows. First of all, Derech Hapshat, Even Ezra, he explains that the in of Chodesh and Shana, year, month and year. So they're two separate things. One is a lunar, one is a solar. Because when you talk about the cycle of the moon, there's no concept of year. There isn't, as the Lashon, he says, Ein la levana shana klal. The moon doesn't have a year. The cycle of the moon is a monthly cycle. Each month, right, there's a new birth of the moon each month. Be precise, every 29 and a half days, plus a little bit. So then there's a full lunar cycle, and it begins again. And then there's a bracket here, which I'm sorry, I don't understand. Also, I'll translate the words, but I'm not sure exactly. Also, when we talk about the situation of where the sun is situated in contrast, in reference to the earth, that's in brackets. At any rate, so the moon is a lunar cycle, and the moilad, the birth of the moon, comes from you every month, but there's no annual lunar cycle. There's no difference. However, the sun, the solar cycle, is an annual cycle. There isn't actually a division into months. As the Ibn Ezra says, Ein la shemesh chodesh klal. The sun doesn't have a month pattern. The annual pattern of the moon, the annual cycle of the sun, is 365 days and a half a day, and a quarter day, and 6 hours approximately. So 365 and a quarter approximately. And the way that the solar system, the cycle of the sun, will create the seasons, but there's no difference in its cycle in terms of the monthly cycle. So the pasuk Hachodesh alachem Rish Chodesh is saying this month will be for you the beginning of months. In other words, the way you count months is going to be the beginning of the lunar year. We are going to make a lunar year, but the beginning of the lunar year is going to be Nisan. As Chazal say, Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael count to the moon. And that begins from Chodesh Nisan. However, when we talk about the Rosh Hashanah, the way it is in the annual cycle, which has got to do with solar, so that's going to start in Tishrei. However, that's one pirush to Even Ezra. Says the Medrash. Next pirush is the Medrash on this pasuk. Hachodesh alachem. So sages tells me Hashem chose His world. He instituted. He put into them the heads of months and years. And then when Hashem chose, not just the world, but Hashem chose Yaakov and his children, so then He affixed within the cycle a Reish Chodesh of redemption. So the Baal HaKedah explains the difference between Hashem choosing the world, and the difference between that and Hashem choosing Yaakov and his sons. It's Hashem choosing the world. This refers to a conduct, a natural conduct, which Hashem has embedded within the world. We talk about the Reish, the head of the, and the head of that operational mode of nature, that's Chodesh Tishrei, that's the head of that year in terms of nature. Once Hashem chooses Yaakov and his sons, what does that refer to? This refers to miraculous cycles embedded that Hashem injects into creation, which is called in the language here the shidud hateva, the shattering, basically the breaking down, the overriding of nature. And that Hashem does because of Yaakov and his children, so He overrides the nature He Himself has set up. The head, the Reish of this particular modus operandi is Chodesh Nisan. Chodesh Elochem, this one shall be for you, this month will be for you the head. Chodesh Nisan is the head of miraculous. So the natural cycle, its head is Tishrei, and the supernatural cycle, the miracle cycle, its head is Nisan. Gimel. All Pirushei Chazal, all the interpretations of our sages of the same pasuk have a connection between them, and you see this here openly. These two things, the difference between a solar year and a lunar year, and the difference between miraculous mode and natural mode, which are opposite. So, in other words, a moon, both of them are connected with each other. Because the way of Teva is what Hashem says after the Mabul lo yishboisu, that no more will they stop or cease to operate in their natural flow of events that that Hashem has set up for them. Natural flow of nature without changes. And that's reminiscent and similar to the pattern of the sun, where there's no difference in the sun in terms of the way it shines. And that's actually why Shana, year, refers to that. Solar cycle, Shana, is also from the expression of Mishnah. It repeats itself. It's the same cycle of the sun that repeats itself without change. The moon is different. Because when we talk about miraculousness is Chiddush. So it's not running things as usual. Something has miraculously changed. And it's only sometimes that Hashem overrides, or the word here is actually meshadid, which means to shatter the operation of nature, the natural order of flow of events for a particular time. And that is similar to the Levana. Levana is something that has changes. Miraculousness is change. Flow, the cycle of the moon is one that's a cycle of change, right? And that's why it's called Chodesh. Chodesh, Lashon Chidush. So we have Shana from the expression of to Mishnah, to repeat. Chodesh from Lashon Chidush, renew, newness, sun, a dependable, predictable pattern, always the same. The moon, ups and downs, like miraculousness. Nisan is the moon month, is the head of the year of the moon, because it's the head of the year of miraculousness, change, chidush. Tishrei is the head of the year of Shana, repetition, sun, predictability, nature. Good. The pasuk, it says two things. This month will be for you the head of the months, and then it says it's the first of the months of the year. So it seems that Chodesh Nisan is not just the first of the months. We said Nisan is connected with months. Months is the lunar cycle. Months is change. But it's saying here also that Nisan is beginning of the months of the year. But 1 second. Year is talking about the thing that's constant, nature. Nisan is a month of redemption. How can that be the head of the year of nature as well? Base, on the other hand, also after Hashem chose His world, and we said that then the beginning of he instituted Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah. So the beginning of the year then is Tishrei. And there it says not just He fixed divisions in years, which you would assume is connected to would be done because that's connected to the pattern of the sun, which is Teva, predictable pattern. But then it also says, though, that when Hashem created the world, He also put in Rosh Shani, we put in the heads of year, but also Rosh Chodashim, heads of the month. But that's miracle. We say that at the initial creation, Hashem created it with nature. Later, He chose Yaakov and He injected Yaakov and his sons, and He injected the miraculousness. So we have to say from this all we see that at both places, both when we talk about the head of the month in terms of miracle, head of the year in terms of miracles, and we talk about the head of the year in terms of nature, both of them are considered to also be interrelated with each other. So we have to say that even though in general, when we talk about Tishrei is connected with Shana, with the annual cycle, the solar cycle is connected with Teva, nature. Nisan is connected with Neis, with Chodesh, with Chidush, with newness, with miracle. However, there's a joining also between them. They're both incorporated within each other as well. Also, in the natural creation itself, before Hashem chooses Yaakov and his sons, there's an inyan of miracle of Rish Chodesh. And also afterwards, after Hashem chooses Yaakov and his sons, and there's an injection of miracle into the world, But that has to express itself not just in the times that there are miracles, that even in the times that it also has to express itself in the change that becomes through the miracle, but that change has to express itself also in and be felt in the natural order of the year. Shana, Shana and Chodesh are not two unrelated things. They have to be, so to speak, working partners in a sense. Hey, in order to understand this, first we have to explain what is the purpose, what is the inner content of these two ways of operation, nature and miracle. Both of them are obviously critical in order to fulfill Hashem's intention for creation and to reveal the greatness of Hashem, but there is a difference between them. Purpose of the Anhogan Nisis, of the miraculous conduct, is to reveal the unlimitedness, the bleak vol, the unlimitedness of Elikus. How Hashem is totally higher than the world. And that becomes expressed through the bittul of its metzias. Bittul is a hard word to translate. Self-nullification. Bittul means that it doesn't feel itself as an own entity. Sublimated. I'm just going to use the word bittul. I figure most of the participants this year are familiar with the word bittul. So, again, the purpose of Nes is to show the world that Hashem is totally higher than the world. And the way that becomes expressed in the world is through the cancellation of the mitzvahs of the world, the bittul of the mitzvahs of the world. Nes, as we said, the literal translation of the way our Chachamim explain Nes is meshadid. It shatters the systems of nature, and it shows that nature doesn't have any, doesn't create any, doesn't even take any place in Hashem's infinity. The infinity of godliness. There's a nature this way, nature that doesn't matter. What Hashem wants, He just does, and nature doesn't create an obstacle whatsoever. What's the purpose of the usual cycle, the natural cycle? Is to reveal how Hashem is enclosed in the world, and even the reality of the world, the metzias of the world, is one with Hashem. Also, the rules of nature, so to speak, are a godly, are a godly conduct. They're what He set up. Because, as we're going to elaborate on, Vav, since the world is created for Torah and for Yisrael, the world is created, so Yisrael should do Torah in the world. We have to say that everything that there is in the creation is actually hinged and dependent on the way the Yid does his Aveda. Therefore, we understand. Therefore, it's understandable that not just is the conduct, the miraculous conduct, that's connected with Hashem choosing Yaakov and his children. Not just is that tolui, there it says specifically, it's after Hashem chose Yaakov and his children that He injected Nes into the world. We understand that that's hinged on them somehow. No, also when Hashem chose His world and He created nature, that also, because the world is created for Torah and Yisrael, it's also dependent on the Aved of Yisrael. However, each Hanhaga, each pattern is dependent on the particular Aveda that a person does that's similar to it. And in Avodas Hashem, therefore, we also see that there's two general patterns that correspond to nature and miracle. By Yid, there has to be the Tznuah, there has to be the movement, there has to be the readiness of Kabbalah Sel, accepting Hashem's yoke, whatever He says, Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Serving Hashem not because the person himself feels motivated to do so, but just because Hashem said obedience. And therefore, you would think that obedience maybe is something lacking. On the contrary, though, if somebody's just doing it just because Hashem said, so he's going to do as much as Hashem wants, and there's no limitation. How much is Hashem's not limited? So he's not limited by the restrictions of his own personality. When he does something because he's motivated, the question is, how much a person is limited? How much is his motivation? When a person is doing it not because he's motivated, because just obedience and total Serious nefesh doing what Hashem wants. There's no limit to that. Hashem is unlimited. And so when a person is in that avodah of Kabbalah soil, I'm a serious nefesh, so that is corresponding to the miraculous pattern, which creates a bittul in the world. On the other hand, also the mitzias of the person has to be not just in a mode of self-sacrifice, ready to do anything Hashem wants, but his own entity has to also be partner and be permeated with the avodas Hashem. And therefore, that's why he has to do Torah. Mitzvah is not just with obedience, but Hashem wants us to do it with the understanding and with feeling. And in that, for that avodah, that's corresponding to the avodah of nature. Because again, that avodah, nature is connecting the mitzias, the reality of the world, with the fact that Hashem's running it. And that's an avodas Hashem. It's us connecting the reality of our intellect and emotion, making that be partner and be part of and the motivation for serving Hashem. Zayin. The purpose of everything is achdos, is bringing together the disparate concepts. And in our case, it's the bringing together of miracle and nature. The fact that the actual expression of miracle and nature are two separate kinds of modes. That's just when you talk about the place of Eiris and Giluyim, from a revealed state of Hashem's presence. And then you have two modes. You have the kav, like literally the line, the mode of believable, of unlimitedness, and that expresses itself in Hashem's miraculous nature. And you have the kav of gvul, that Hashem is also able to operate within nature, within limitedness. So Hashem expresses the way it is in a revealed way. They're two separate things. They're two Hashem operating in two modes: miracle, unlimitedness, or nature, his expression in limitation. However, when you talk about the yechilas, the potential, the ability of Atzmos, of the essence of Hashem, so the way they are in Hashem himself, in Atzmos, in the essence of Hashem, unlimited, believable, and Gvul, limited, they're not two different modes. They're one thing. The expression of Hashem's completeness. As we know, it says in the books of Kabbalah that if you say that Hashem only is able to do unlimited things, in other words, wherever Hashem expresses itself, it comes out in an unlimited way, but he doesn't have the power to do things in a limited way because he's unlimited. So then by saying that, you're creating a lack in his completeness. So the shleimus, the wholesomeness, the completeness of Hashem's perfection is that limited and unlimited are both equally possibilities. So b'pnimius, the expression of Hashem's potential, Hashem's ability is, if you take that away, you say that there's a difference. The expression of limited and unlimited are just expressions of Hashem's wholesomeness and his ability. And that's why the expression of Hashem's essential desire of Atzmos to creation expresses itself in the combination of both, because at their source, they're both an expression of his completeness. That's the way it is also in the service of Hashem, our service of Hashem. A Yid, what is demanded, what is expected from a Jew, is the unification of both ways of serving Hashem. The Mesiras Nefesh and obedience, which is higher than intellect, and at the same time also joining that with the avodas of Hashem, that is a product of the inner keiches, the mind and heart, and that becomes achieved through the arousal of the essence of the neshama of a yid. Because again, when we talk about the essence there, both of these expressions are also in the neshama. They're both equally available. So by having that essence of the neshama expressed in the avodah, really both of them, you could have the Kabbalah fused with the fact that it's also becoming connected and becoming permeated or becoming um, carried through in the person's faculties, heart and soul, mind and heart. Ches. Since in their at their source, in their very essence, Nes, miracle, and Teva, nature, are one thing. So we understand that even the way they come down in the world as separate things, openly they're separate. Nature is nature, miracle is a shattering of nature. But really, in their inner sense, in the pneumius, they're really united. And this expresses itself in the fact that in Teva itself, in nature itself, you find a certain attribute, you find a certain um, um, pattern within them, a tchuna of higher than nature, as we're going to express in the next ice. The opposite, the miracle also has with it in itself some aspect of nature, as we're going to say in a few paragraphs. Test the explanation to this. When we talk about recognizing the greatness of Hashem through looking at nature, there's two ways. First of all, there's the meditation and the thinking of the way that Hashem works his world, all the pattern of the solar system and all of the galaxies. So you come to the understanding there must be a Baal Habayis, there must be an owner of the house that's operating and making everything work in total in a total organized pattern. As the Rambam writes about Avraham Avinu, he started to think in his mind, how is it possible that this globe, this earth, should be always operating, and there shouldn't be an operator? Who makes it go around, and who makes things happen? It can't just turn by itself. That's one way of seeing Hashem's presence in the world. Base, through looking at the fact that the world operates in a way of total unchanging, through the unchangingness, the consistency of creation, what you understand is that that kind of consistency can't come just from the created being itself, because created things are are, um, are always losing their identity and decreasing and changing. They don't stay constant. And it can't even be the consistency of nature, can't even be from the revelation of Hashem that is enclosed in the limitations of world. This must come from the unlimitedness of Hashem, the Ein Sof of Hashem, which is injected into the way of Teva. So, in other words, you see in other places it speaks about the fact that you see the sun and the moon and all the system just they're as strong as in the day that they're created. So the consistency, and the fact that we see bodies, the great bodies of existence that are there strong like the day they were created. So the Rebbe doesn't elaborate on this point here. It says this in other places. So this tells us that in Teva itself we see elements of the Mailam and Teva higher than Teva. The fact that Ein Sof is unchangeable. It says, Ani Hashem lo shonisi. I am Hashem, who doesn't change. We see a reflection of this unchangeability in the consistency and unchangingness that we can see embedded in creation. Yud, and this is the expression of what Chazal say, when Hashem chose his world, he put in Chodeshes and years. From the Lashon Chazal, you understand that we're not talking here the way Hashem created the world. He said, no, when Hashem chooses the world, just like there's the world, and then there's Hashem choosing Yankov and his sons. The same language here is used about the world. So it means that there's a world, there's the way it is inside creation, and then there's the way Hashem chooses the world. So in other words, because of Hashem's choice of the world, that's why he put in something new. So we have to understand, since Rish Chodesh and the heads of months, the heads of years, is a natural thing that's in the world. So that's part of the world. It doesn't mean that once Hashem chose the world, he injected that into the world. That's part of creation itself. No, the explanation is, says the Rebbe, because Hashem chose the world, which bechira mitis, true choice we know comes only from atzmos, from the essence of Hashem. No, so if once we're talking about the essence of Hashem, we just said before that Teva and not Teva are one thing there. They're just expressions of Hashem's completeness. And therefore, in Teva itself, once Hashem chooses the world, so in Teva itself, in the cycle of year and month, which are natural things, gets expressed Hashem's unlimitedness. That's what it means when Hashem chose His world. He put in Reish Chodesh in years. This is the nace. Chodesh, as we said, refers to the miracles. It's a changing thing. This is the miraculousness that Hashem injected within world. In other words, that in nature you can see the unchangeability, and therefore you can see the ness aspect. In other words, it's higher than world, which is really ness in some sense. Yud Aleph. Same way it is in Teva itself, as we said just now, that within nature you can see embedded elements of higher than nature. So also on the other hand, when we talk about the mode of miraculousness, it's also not limited to be only expressed in a way of miraculousness, which expresses the unlimitedness of Hashem. We said limited and unlimited is the same when we talk about Atmos. Here also there's a way where the miracle is actually coexisting with Teva, and it allows that in Teva itself we should be able to see Hashem's leadership. And that's why there are kinds of nisim that are totally enclosed within nature. And there's two extremes to this. On the one hand, it's a ness, just like a ness that's not in Teva. The psak din is we say that we know there's two kinds of nisim. Chanukah, which is totally miraculous. We went to battle, the few against the many, and miraculous miracles was a miracle that wasn't, vested in nature. And Purim was the opposite. Purim was a nest that happened through the natural progression of events, like the Megillah says. And we make the same bracha. We say on both of them, we make a bracha with Hashem's name, Shasa Nisim Laviseinu. That means that it's a nest, even if it's enclosed in nature like Purim, it's a nest. On the contrary, says the Rebbe in brackets. Azal tell us that dafka about the miracles that are enclosed in nature, we say that the pasuk of David HaMelech, that Hashem makes the niflois gedolos, the real big wonders. Only He knows. In other words, they're hidden. They're vested within nature. However, so on one side it's a miracle. On the other hand, the miracle itself, which is totally higher than nature, comes out in an expression and enclosed in the ways of nature. And it enables and it creates that the nature itself should be operative just as Hashem wants, like an axe in the hand of the woodchopper. In other words, like Hashem, thus says, when we talk about Hashem's miraculous leadership higher than nature, you also have a natural aspect to it. Because not only does miracle shatter, take over, and override Teva, but through the miracle itself, nature becomes uplifted to a place of higher than Teva. So we could say that this is the reason why Nisan is not just the Reish Chodoshim, the head of the months. The head of the months. Months is nature, but no, it's the head of the year. I'm sorry, months is supernatural. We understand why Chodesh Nisan should be the head of the cycle of months, because months is changes. Changes is not the pattern of regular ongoing nature. It's higher than nature. But why is it also the Rishon? We asked, why is it the Rishon for the months of the year? Because even in the year, when we talk about the year, which is nature, the purpose of nature is, what's the purpose of the Nisan miracle? Is to express within nature that it's being run by Hashem. So it's not, each of these is not an island to itself. The purpose of the Nes, higher than nature, is to show that nature is itself a product of, as the Rebbe said here, there's a lot of footnotes that I didn't go into in the Sikha, but we talk about the miracle that's enclosed in nature, like Purim, or miracle that's higher than nature, like Hanukkah. The Rebbe goes in the Hachodesh that even the Nesim that are enclosed in Teva, even the Nisim that are not enclosed in Teva, so they seem to shatter the pattern of the world, But 1 second, the rest of the world is operating. So let's say there's a miracle, the sea splits, but the rest of the world was working as usual. So in other words, the purpose is, so there's a world, and in the world, what's becoming expressed is the higher than world. It's not canceling the world. The purpose of a ness is that the world should be driven by Hashem. We should see that that nature itself is being operated by higher than nature. So in a way, you see that more in miracles that are expressed, that they don't break nature, but they actually take over nature. I don't know if I should inject a mushal here, but sometimes it helped me to a little bit understand. Um, you have in somebody, you have a train, a car. It's like Hashem, so to speak. When you talk about a nest that's in nature, it's like Hashem really taking over the steering wheel. So it's still a car and it's still going on roads, but it's Hashem that's steering it directly. So it's a nest in Teva. It's not like Hashem just takes over and the car starts flying. It's no longer a car. It's just a car. It doesn't fly. It just flies and it gets from place to place. That's canceling nature. Here we're talking about. So there's many places in Chassidus explain the mile of this one, the mile of that one, but the ultimate is that the whole purpose is to express within nature that it's higher, that it's being run by Hashem, who's not limited, who's higher than nature. According to this, we can understand the connection, the connection between Parshat Hachodesh and Parshat Tazria. The difference we said between Hachodesh and Tazria is what? Is the difference between Nes and Teva, right? That Parshat Hachodesh speaks about the Gilim Umayla Hashem coming and redeeming the Bnei Yisrael from Egypt. It's higher than created beings, just like a miracle. Tazria, we talked about the fact that it's talking about Isha ki Tazria, the initiation from below, which has got to do with the mitzias, the reality of a person, which is like Teva. It's got to do with mitzias. So when the Parshat Hachodesh comes out in Parshat Tazria, so it brings out this point. B'pnimis, the pnimis, they're one thing. We're going to see this la'asid lava, because la'asid lava it says that ish v'ishu ladba. It says that even though now ish maziyat tchila led us nekeva, but then there's going to be ish maziyat tchila. Hashem will initiate the mile of Hachodesh. It comes from above, like miracle. At the same time, there'll be the full benefit of the mila of isha ki Tazria. That the birth will be the ishuladba, that born of this zachar, of this initiation from above, will be born the strength of revelation that usually comes only from the isha ki Tazria, from the initiation from below. That's going to be when Mashiach comes. Kol tov, all the best.